He's an important figure, not just in art history, but he's also an important figure locally. He's now recognized as one of the earliest abstract artists in the world. He sort of remains mostly in obscurity.
Neighbors would ask me if I knew the Dawsons or if I knew anything about the son. The son was an artist.
Not knowing that this guy existed was an ignorance that was, fascinating to me.
Most of his work is abstract. It's more emotional. He just wasn't in the mainstream.
George and Eva Dawson had 4 children, 4 boys. They vacationed here in the late 1800s, and as the boys grew up and got a little bit older, they wanted to get a place out in the country. And so they always would come there every summer for 3 months out of the year. Well, the family kept that for 75 years. My ex-husband and I purchased this place that they had sold. I hadn't lived there long before neighbors would ask me if I knew the Dawsons or if I knew anything about the son. The son was an artist. And in this article, I found out that he had been in the Armory show with Matisse and Duchamp and all these artists. That was really exciting. So I started to just take this information and put it in this folder. In the year 2000, these 2 men drove up my driveway, and they were introduced themselves as Manierre Dawson's grandsons.
I mean, it's just by happenstance. If we hadn't decided to try this one last road, I wouldn't be sitting here today. My name is Peter Lockwood, grandson of Manierre Dawson.
We became instant friends, and we shared information. They told me what was going on out in the world with Manierre Dawson, some of the art exhibitions that had been going on and things that were coming.
Grandfather Manierre had a show in Chicago in 2003 at Hollis Taggart Galleries. Sharon came down for that, and just got to know each other. And I came up here and started visiting, especially after I saw what she did with this place. It was just totally amazing.
When I saw the place, I fell in love with it, even though the house was run down and that type of thing. But I fell in love with the way that it's kind of stuck back in the woods and by itself, and kind of just nestled between the hills. So I fell in love with that. I just love to garden, and so that was just kind of an outcome of living there and being outside. I like to be outside, and that's one way to do it.
My brothers and I used to hike up to this area, which is called the Humps. When my great-grandfather bought this place in 1903, all these trees weren't here because Ludington was an old logging town. So when you drive in or come into the area back then, you could see 2 humps back here that looked like camel humps. And that's where the name came from. I think my grandfather and one of my great-uncles came up with that. When we came up here, he'd put us to work, and matter of fact, there's a field down this way about 800 yards that I spent 3 weeks cutting all the sumac down when I was 13 or 14. So he kind of chased us out of his studio when we came in there because we were young. We didn't know what was going on. And he told us a couple other places to stay away from. Of course, we didn't listen to him.
He thought that in the winter he could just kind of sit around and paint, whereas he had tree trimming to do and fires to feed and horses and, lots and lots of work. So he found that it was easier to do sculptures because those he could walk away from and feed the wood stove, without anything changing when he got back. One thing that really interested me was how the area influenced his work. This daedal sculpture behind us is a representation of a 1958 piece that he did while he was on the farm. When he was doing his tree trimming, that would give him a lot of inspiration for some of his sculptures. And daedal was one of those that we figure was one from the trimming of the trees.
He sort of remains mostly in obscurity, and he's now recognized as one of the earliest abstract artists in the world. And it's become something important for us because he lived here for many years. And so he's one of the masters, that is, the 2 masters in conversation. And Bill, you're the other one.
Well, thanks.
You said that you had first really encountered Manierre's work here at the college. What was your first impression?
Well, I thought it was stunning. Not knowing that this guy existed was, an ignorance that was, fascinating to me. Okay, because his work to me is very striking. All his work has this kind of fluidity. You see elements of trees in his work and apples hanging from trees and that sort of thing.
While he was pruning trees, he would often sort of dash back into the house. And if I remember correctly, he typically used his dining room table for a place to do his work.
It's almost to me as if there's such great material beauty here, the forests and the lake and so on, that becomes almost inevitably the subject matter.
When you sit in front of these canvases, and I'm very specifically talking about these ones that we have here, how much pre-planning?
I just get a notion that I, for instance, want to have triangles or squares or circles, or I want to have a loose fluid that I can push around or something like that. There are various things like that that are involved in making a painting for me. And I think that there's a definite flow to what he does, which is, I think, what I may have in common with him as far as that goes.
I think you're correct with the inspiration that he found. And I think this is part of why I was very interested in doing this exhibition, because you're coming from a sort of a path, and he came through a certain path. And I think at this juncture, these two sets of works, they don't collide. They sort of very comfortably sit next to each other. And I think as artists, there's a lot to learn from both you and him.
One exhibition was in Chicago, and I got a brochure, and it said, the title of it was Bringing Manierre Dawson Home. And I was like, that's not right. Manierre Dawson's home is here. This is where he lived for 55 years and where he raised his family and where he spent his summers and that type of thing. Most of us didn't know his name here in Ludington or anything about him. And so I thought, well, we need to change that some way. How can that happen? And the Arts and Science building was going to be renovated, and there was plans in there for an art gallery. I thought that would be great to have a Manierre Dawson gallery that would acknowledge him and get some information out there about him. And so I took a sabbatical and planned a grand opening and got the family involved, and they donated it's actually our second piece, because Manierre Dawson had donated a piece at one time. So from there, my notebook just grew, and I ended up writing a book. The thing about Manierre, when he came in the summer, he would feel that he was inspired by the natural surroundings and by hard work in the day, and then to then take time for his art and to work on that. He felt that really helped him to be more creative.
He was known around here as a fruit farmer. He just wasn't in the mainstream. But that's changed, and the awareness of his work is becoming widely known. That makes me happy. It'd make him happy too.
The college continues to expand its extensive collection and deepen its understanding of Manierre Dawson's work. Our goal is to preserve and share his legacy, along with inspiring others to learn from his innovative techniques. If you have information to share or would like to consider contributing artwork from your estate, please contact us at westshore.edu.